Welcome back, everyone, to our domestic supply chain summit. Really excited for the content today and happy to bring a new face to our summit as well, as we're going to dive into freight fraud, but also compliance, right? The preventative ways that we can make sure our shipments get from A to B and that our customers are happy, of course, with that as well. And with us today, actually, is Elizabeth Moscosos. There we go. She, of course, is the president of Moscoso Express. And we're going to dive into, of course, how to prevent fraud, how to fight fraud, but more importantly, the compliance and the operations around creating a more preventative space within your company. And Elizabeth, being new to our summits, I'd love if you could share a little bit of your freight background and what brought you to being the president that you are today.
Yes. Well, Moscoso Express is a 21-year-old business here out in the Chicago ORD sector. We focus on the first and final mile for and support a lot of shippers as well as freight forwarders here in the area. So it's been quite the journey, especially these last few years. We've seen so much go on, and it's a pleasure to be here and share what we have been able to identify, as well as any type of tricks that could help anyone else.
Yeah, and I think especially with the book of business that you're doing and the specialization, I would say a little bit more of just outside of just over the road long haul is going to be really interesting for this conversation as well. And let's start off by kind of setting the scene. And from your perspective, what types of fraud are you seeing impacting companies and leaders like yourself?
I would end up saying that the thing that we hear the most, especially when we go to conferences, we have our monthly meet check-ins with our clients. This topic keeps on being raised, and we're fortunate to not be subjects of that. But there are very unfortunate stories that we have heard, and so trucking companies have to do the due diligence of vetting their partner, so that way we can make sure that the BOL, the addresses align. The address that we receive in the email to go deliver to aligns with the actual document that we received where we go pick up, and matches the document that we receive via email. So it's very much a team effort, all the way from our client to our dispatch to management to our truck driver. When they pull up, are they making sure that the facility looks legitimate? So there are a few stories I could say. Unfortunately, some trucking companies that are trying to do business with our clients, that they have shared these stories, they end up sharing that MC numbers and DOTs maybe don't match, addresses don't match, the number of units. For example, there's one unit, but they've accepted three loads for the same day. So some things just don't quite line up. And so those are things to look out for. And hopefully that tip helps a little bit.
Well, what's interesting is like it is a supply chain, and the fun part about being a chain is you almost develop a an organic game of telephone where I think sometimes even fraud or mistakes happen in the industry just from the amount of people involved in a transaction, right? And these transactions leave gaps. I think where a lot of maybe criminals or even just accidental fraud is happening as well. And I want to start on the preventive aspect of it, right? Building a fraud resistant company in particular. What do you feel like are internal processes that could be laid out to help vet new partners and carriers as well?
I would say we always have to start off with our SOPs. So, as small or as large as you are, try to develop some standard operating procedures. So that way we can start preventing anyone from being in an unknown space. So, there's always a level of unknown as you do this day in and day out, but we want to avoid the big unknowns. So, there's a new client that potentially wants to give us some work, that's great news. But we still want to follow through our procedures, making sure that we dot our I's, cross our T's. We want to make sure that we end up having management also involved. Is this a vetted company that we want to do business with? Have we heard good feedback from their references? Have they gone through our credit check? Do we have these fundamental bare bones information from these companies that we're trying to do business with?
You know what? It's interesting because a lot of times in these discussions, the focus is a lot of times on more of like, either the carriers or the logistics providers themselves uh showcasing their authenticity, right? And who they are. But I love that you kind of like bring up also the shipper aspect of it, because there has been very unique situations where people do pretend to be shippers, and even more so, as much as this conversation is about fraud, thankful that you brought up the credit aspect, because we are unfortunately in this economic environment where, there are going to be maybe what business that's one that seems too good to be true, right? I remember from my broker days, when a new rep is like, I just got millions of dollars in new business, and I'm like, that screams to me we need to get a credit check, right? And so while that's safeguarding, of course, the cash flow of your business, it's also safeguarding, I think, bad players as well. So I think it's a really great aspect that you bring up, because, again, so much of these conversations focus on two parties and don't focus even on the shipper or the clients themselves as well, which I think is huge, right?
Exactly. And something as simple as even just verifying that the signature matches
Mm.
the email signature. Like, is it at so and so? Does that even match with the BOL you're receiving or the documents or the website that they're sending you to book the appointment through or things of that nature?
Yeah, is there any platforms, technologies, or sites that you use to help with those processes at all?
So for ourselves, we end up going through quite a few things. As from the shipper carrier perspective, or from the shipper perspective, forwarder perspective, RMIS is something that we end up using as a carrier, just verifying that yes, we have these many units, our insurance matches, things of that nature. From a carrier perspective, verifying the business that we're going to be doing, we end up going through making sure that, for example, we connect on Verut as an air freight is one of our niches, and so therefore when we connect with them, they are in a way saying, yes, this relationship is official. It's through a vetted third party platform. We're also connecting our ELDs, potentially providing GPS tracking. And again, by going through these other ways to connect, we're also verifying that these are approved, vetted. We develop these relationships that's more outside of just a standard phone call or an email.
Oh, definitely. And I think just even engraving that culture right into your workforce is going to create those good habits of double checking in all places as well. Another part of your work, though, especially doing that first and final mile, and especially just looking over the type of industries that you service, I think a big part of this too is just compliance in regards to the overall freight you move. Again, I think compliance has earned its spot in the freight fraud conversation, because compliance in particular is the preemptive aspect that avoids a lot of these problems. So I would love to hear how you've set up your compliance program for your company, and especially the customers that you serve, that I'm sure coming like in and out of O'Hare or some of these free trade zones around the Chicago area are looking for as well.
Yeah. So we end up going through and we end up having to pass a few audits. It even starts from auditing. So our clients, they end up coming to meet with us. They end up going through whether it's virtual or in person audits for that compliance aspect as well. So we have TSA, so the Transportation Security Administration, we move some health related aspects. So now we're talking about GDP. We have to make sure that all of these, again, just standard operating procedures. Have your SOPs in place for as big or as small. Really have to really emphasize that. That helps us be able to have a universal understanding of how we're going to operate. Our team all universally respond in a certain manner, and that becomes part of our culture. So yes, we have some compliance metrics that we have to meet, but we also want to engrave that to not just be papers or just things that we say during monthly safety meetings or quarterly meetings, but rather as part of the company culture and how we actually perform on a day to day.
Yeah, it's again, building that into the culture, I think is huge. And how do you think you resonate that with your employees, right? So if they know this is a part of doing business with your company, and it's not just a checklist of items they need to click off.
We end up making sure that it's not just how you said, something to click off.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have our documents, but we also raise that in our meetings. And it can be a very casual conversation where we're talking, and next thing you know, we're also saying, "Oh, here, we ended up getting this phishing email. Like we want to watch out with these type of things that are standing out." And we also include that into our chats. So just our generic conversations as people run through scenarios that could potentially raise questions. Did we receive an email that was potentially questionable? Did we go to a warehouse that seems a little abandoned? Maybe no one's working there. Have we raised that to the client? Have we clarified, no, this is okay? It's all legitimate, things of that nature. So having that continuously be raised, not just by management, but rather by our team members, whether that's dispatch, payables, drivers, sending us pictures, sending us videos, trying to make sure then we start getting this collaborative feel and everyone is part of the solution, part of that barrier, part of the protection to the company as a whole.
That's awesome. And, I'd love to hear if you, could positively critique, right, our industry, whether it's brokers, carriers, maybe even shippers as well who are watching today. I mean, this is our domestic supply chain summit. We're going to have those in the audience as well. What's one thing you wish those parties took more seriously when it came to preventing whether fraud or compliance issues with their freight?
The need for due diligence. So many times we end up receiving documentation, and next thing you know, a very frequent one is, well, we're not actually going to be delivering to this location. We're going to be delivering to this other location. The
Good old
BOL says
lies.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. The BOL says otherwise, though. And you're wondering, like, okay, thank you for letting us know. We want to do right by our client. However, can you please update that on the BOL and send it back to us? And then many times we end up getting the response, just type into it, just write over it, just fix it yourself type of attitude, and it's like,
Yeah.
yes, we can do that, so it's understandable, but we wanna make sure that this is properly documented. We don't want to be handwriting the delivery address. We don't want it to seem anything that would break our again, our SOPs, anything that would break our procedures. We want our drivers that are part of the solution, part of the protection team, if you will, to know that whenever we do receive a BOL, they are actually going to that delivery address. It's not like an address that we just give them over the phone or anything like that. So hopefully that is one thing, one aspect. The need for patience, as urgent as the shipment may be, and granted, this is Moscoso Express. Express shipments are part of just what we do. So
Yeah.
when we get that phone call and it's like, the location is about to close in 2 hours. Can you get there? And it's like urgency is noticed across the phone, urgency is in the emails. We still follow our baseline procedures, which are making sure that the company is legitimate, making sure that the BOL matches, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's this industry is almost lives off of urgency, and the unfortunate part from that, though, is as we all know, even in our personal lives, you rush things and things get missed, and that's how I think a lot of these problems arise. And I think some of the criminals depend on that rushing and that lack of communication to get away with certain things in this industry too. So I'm very happy that you've got it controlled and focused and given great advice to our audience today. To wrap this up, I'd love if you could maybe share a lesson that you've learned fighting fraud and really raising the issue of compliance, so that our viewers have an idea of how they can protect their businesses too.
Make sure it starts all the way from the start to the finish of that movement, right? All the way from the way in which we end up onboarding new clients, having some type of standards around that, so that way we are always doing the same, relatively the same things, whether it is for a rush order or an order to deliver here in 5 days. Um, from the start, those interactions, make sure that we include everyone as part of that solution as well. So the admin team that's overseeing those documents. And then next thing you know, now dispatch is putting information in. So the addresses match. Does the BOL in alignment? Are these locations that we've gone to before, or are they new locations that we should be a little bit more aware of? And the driver. Is the driver making sure that he gets signatures in the right spaces? Is the driver making sure that the warehouse address matches, that there's signage there? And then billing, making sure that billing is paying the proper invoices. We've unfortunately seen some emails come through, and supposedly I have given permission, right, in this long, lengthy email of a back and forth that exists. I give urgent permission to please pay this so and so. And our payments team, thankfully, is also part of that solution, making sure that we verify, is this a vetted partner of ours that we end up having services from or providing services to make sure that those exchanges go. So include everyone in the protection because everyone is part of the solution as well.
Love to hear it. I think the audience is going to leave here with some great advice and at least some steps forward in their compliance work as well. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to learn more about your company, what's the best way for them to do so?
MoscosoExpress.com, MOSCOSO.com is our website. We are on LinkedIn. You can find our company page there, Instagram, Google reviews, all of those social media platforms, you could say we're there. We're trying to make sure that people are aware of us as well as know where they can get good service from.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you as well, Grace. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, for our audience, continue to enjoy the rest of the summit as well.